Good evening. This is Rodney Reynolds, founder of American Legacy, and thank you for joining us this evening for our American Legacy Network's Fire Chat with the founder. Tonight, I am excited to have as my guest Gwen Moten, who is a Renaissance woman. Good evening, Gwen.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you.
Good. It's been some time since we've seen one another. We have known each other for about 3 or 4 years.
That's
Uh, I
true.
think I think I initially met you in 2018. I think January of 2018 when I came over to Newark City Hall to meet with you regarding the city participating as our partner for our mobile truck exhibit that was going to be in the city of Newark. And you arranged all of that. You put it all together. And I think we were over there in the city for 2 days with our mobile truck exhibit. And that was in February of 2018. We were actually celebrating the 10th anniversary of American Legacy's mobile truck exhibit. And we were touring all around the country, and Newark was one of the stops. And someone gave me your name. I reached out, and you know what? Now that I think about it, I believe it was Frederick
Yes,
Myers.
it was.
It
Yes.
was Fred who gave me your name, and I reached out to you, and we had a meeting, and we came over there for 2 days, and it was a great time that we had over in the city of Newark. And I appreciate you arranging the tour stop there in Newark and really partnering with us to bring what we were had on display to the citizens there in Newark, New Jersey. So thank you for that again. So, but that was back in 2018. And I know during that time we spent some time together on the mobile truck exhibit. You were telling me your story, and I was really fascinated by your story and your history. And so before we get started, I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio, and then we'll just have a little fireside conversation this evening for about 45 minutes or so.
Well,
But
first,
let
thank
me
you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, I'm glad you were able to join us. Um, Gwen Moten is a White House appointed American cultural specialist, the CEO of Theater World Music Service, a City of Newark Landmarks and Historic Preservation's commissioner, and former city director of arts and culture. She served as the United Nations non-governmental organization representative and corporate executive for the Newark Performing Arts Corporation, Newark Symphony Hall. She is an arts and culture educator, events planner and producer, Broadway and international concert artist, music conductor, researcher, lecturer, and published columnist. I can go on and on and on and on. But you've done so many things during your career. It's just amazing. And you are from Birmingham, Alabama,
That's true. Born and raised in the South, the deep South,
the deep South. And
the
so
deep
let's
South.
start. So let's start there in Birmingham. Tell us about Gwen Moten in Birmingham, the early years.
Okay. Well, growing up in the deep South is an adventure in itself. Of course, it was the segregated South of that time. Jim Crow laws prevailed. We were in our communities, the Black communities, which were very caring and loving, and we took care of each other, prosperous. But we were in a city called the Magic City. Birmingham was called the Magic City because it began developing with steel and iron industry, and there was a lot of hope there. But the hope really was for the white residents of the city. But people of color did participate in the steel mills, working hard hours, and the city was growing. while the city was growing, the Magic City was growing, segregation was the law of the land. The Jim Crow laws, as I mentioned, prevailed. Of course, there were many restrictions. But as a child in Birmingham, we didn't really know a lot of this that was going on. Our parents protected us. Our parents made sure that we didn't feel the sting of the negativity that was around us as well as we could. We obviously went to segregated schools. We had separate churches, social organizations. Everything was separate. But our parents did not allow us to be a part of all of that negativity if they could avoid it. I remember my mother telling us that her children would never ride on the bus. Well, we didn't know why, but that was because of segregation. You had to sit in the back. And I remember my parents taking us places, and we were being told we couldn't go in. We couldn't go into certain stores to try and close because we were Black, and there was obviously a special section in Birmingham, downtown Birmingham, to which we would cater, and we would go to our movie houses or our various programs. So this is the South in which I grew up, in Birmingham, Alabama, that Dr. Martin Luther King said it was the most segregated city in the United States. So that's my upbringing, but certainly being surrounded, being insulated from a lot of that stuff. That negative.
That negative stuff. Now, with everything going on during the civil rights movement, doing everything that was taking place, especially in the Deep South and in other areas across America, one incident in particular you have an intimate sort of connection to, and that's the 16th Street church bombing in 1963. Yeah. And that connection specifically is with Denise McNair, who was your childhood friend and who unfortunately was one of the 4 little girls that were died in that church bombing. Tell us about your connection with Denise and your relationship and how that event changed your life.
As you mentioned, Denise was my childhood best friends, and we were so very, very close. And in fact, we were so close, we were in the same class together, that the teachers actually separated us. They had to put us in separate classes because they said, you can't be that close. So we grew up together, playing together, staying over each other's houses, and just having a great time. When the teachers separated us, we grew a little bit apart. But she was always a friend, and the family moved a little distance from us. And as time went on, in 63, on a Saturday night, Denise's mother brought Denise to my house. I was so excited because I hadn't seen her for a while. And we began playing again, and my mother and Denise's mother talked, and we just had a joyous time. And Denise's mother asked my mother if Gwen could go to church with them. And for some reason, my mother said no. And of course, we were surprised and disappointed, but we were little girls of the 60s, and of course, you didn't argue or dispute an adult. You said, all right. So we continued playing. And as the evening ended, Denise and her mother walked out on the porch, and I remember saying to Denise, I'll see you later. And that was Saturday night. And the next morning, September the 15th, I was in my church in Sunday school, and we heard this loud sound, and the church shook. And I remember beneath my feet, the flooring shook. And oddly enough, no one spoke, no one said anything, but I know why. You see, Birmingham was also called Bombingham. And in Birmingham, there had been so many bombings of Black churches, Black homes, Black businesses, that the adults obviously knew what was going on when they heard that bombing. And the children just sat there. And as after the Sunday school service, we went into the church service, and I remember sitting there in the church pew, and a voice whispered in my right ear that Denise was dead. And that
Mm,
was the morning that Denise and three other young ladies had been killed by these bombs that were placed there by the Ku Klux Klan.
yes.
Uh, I, I, yes, and I remember that. So for years, I could hear that voice and felt someone touch my shoulder to let me know that they had something to say. And I always wondered, why would someone whisper that into a little child's ear? And I don't know, but this is what happened. And we often talk about the fact, we meaning the family and friends, that if being Denise's friend, very obviously I would have been with her because
Correct.
she and
Yeah.
yes, the three other girls were prepping for church. And I would have been with my best friend and would have unfortunately could have been that fifth child who have passed. And so those memories are strong with me of that possibility, and that had it not been for my mother saying no, that I wouldn't be able to be here to do whatever this is I'm supposed to do, which was to serve and to help. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to be in positions where I can do that, and mostly through my music as a performer. So to develop programs and to work with young adults, young children, to teach them through music and other ways to be positive and strong citizens and human beings.
Now, did you ever? I'm wondering if you ever found out the reason why your mother said no, or was it, was it just, she maybe had a, a feeling inside, or just, she didn't want you to stay over to your friend's house that night.
I'm not certain. I asked my mother. In fact, there was an interview with the Star Ledger, the local newspaper, one time, and she said she did not really know why. But I know my mother had strong intuition. I know that
Mm-hmm.
she would feel certain things. My sister believed that maybe I didn't go to Denise's church because I had something to do at our church.
Okay.
Whatever the reason, my mother simply said to me, I don't really know. And so I'm here as a result of her
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah. And do you know who whispered into your ear that Sunday morning that Denise had passed in that church bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church?
Rodney, that's the oddity. I don't know of any human who would have whispered to a little girl sitting in church that your friend is dead. So I've wondered that who or what may have said to me, um, Denise is dead. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't know
Okay.
anyone who would have done that.
So that remains a mystery, so to speak.
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Okay.
does.
Okay.
And being of strong faith, we believe that many things are possible.
That's true. That's true. That's very true. Now, did you, after that horrific event, how much longer did you stay in Birmingham, and what did you do from that point forward as a teenager in Birmingham?
I grew up studying music. I had become well known to an opera teacher who was from New York with the City Opera. And he asked if my mother, if he could take me under his wings. And I began studying with him in college, before and in college. And it was perceived that I would become the next opera diva, the next person for the Metropolitan Opera. So I studied and I continued to go into that path. But as I got older, after graduating from college, I realized that was not the path that I was to take. And I taught a year or so in a high school, and then at the suggestion of someone from New York, I don't know if you remember A. Peter Bailey, who used to write, who was a columnist and a writer in many of the American magazines, but he encouraged me. He said, if you don't uh, go to New York or fulfill your dreams, you will always wonder why. And that I took that to heart. So with that being said, I said, well, it's been a couple of years. I don't know where to go. He said, let me give you the name of a place. And I wrote the American Academy of Dramatic Art. And they
Okay.
invited me, yes, they invited me to come to New York to study. So, and I was never interested in being an actor per se, but they invited me to come study, and I did. And in fact, uh, while being there, they asked me to teach, which was the first time in their 100-year history. Yes, in their 100-year history, they'd asked for a matriculating student to also be a teacher. So I began teaching there as well. I began teaching music and presentation. So from being in the American Academy, I became exposed to theater, not focusing on opera, but wanting to sing in musical theater. And with Peter Bailey's direction, I began exploring Black theater in New York and Harlem, and became involved in many of the productions and getting to know those people. And eventually, I was invited to be. I was on Broadway, and so my
And
career. Yes.
no, I was going to say, what was that like being exposed to that creative scene, I should say, in Harlem, in New York, coming from Birmingham, Alabama? I mean, I know how I felt moving from Cleveland, Ohio, to New York in 1997, and hitting the ground running, and how much energy there was, and that I felt by being in Manhattan. So, how did that feel for you, coming from the South, segregated South, Birmingham, Alabama, and then being in the Mecca, uh, in terms of the Black Mecca, Harlem, and New York in general? How did that feel?
Oh, believe me, there was much, much excitement and enjoyment and exposure. And the odd thing, maybe it's not odd, but I was just so comfortable with all the excitement, with the nights, the lights, and traveling to and from Harlem, traveling in that Midtown Manhattan, going to the shows. I just felt like this was my comfort space. I was supposed to be there. I was very happy with going because I had such security from home with my family. They always supported me. And I knew that if there was ever a problem, I felt uncomfortable, I knew I could always go home. So that gave me a level of security I think maybe some people may or may not have had. And with that security, I just found everything was exciting and was there for me to be a part of, to touch, to speak with, to get to know all these wonderful artists whose names you only see on record albums or on playbills, and they were right there for me to talk and to touch. So it was exciting, but it was not so unusual. Somehow I just seemed to fit in.
Well, you can tell by what you've done in your career that it had an impact on you. Did you ever think about moving back to Birmingham, or once you got to New York, to the New York area, to the East Coast, that was it?
That was it. I never really thought of, even though my mother would say, baby, you can always come back home. I never, I never really thought about going back to Birmingham to live.
Yeah.
But I did have the invitation to come back and talk, which I did. I would go back and talk and get to know other people who had dreams like mine. And I've been fortunate enough to hear some of those persons say to me, if you hadn't come back to Birmingham and taken the time, I would not be doing what I'm doing. There's a young lady who's at the National Museum of African American Museum who has said that to me, and I'm just so pleased that I could go there and expose them to what I've had and challenge them to do the same if they wanted. So, but New York was comfortable for me. So yes, I
And
felt I would probably stay here.
that's so important to do that, to go back to your home community, to spend time to inspire, to encourage. You never know who you're going to encourage and inspire by the work that you do, and who may be looking at you and want to emulate some of the things that you may have done. And to see you go away from Birmingham to go to New York, that probably inspired many to do something similar. So that's so important to do.
Yes, it was part of our training. I want to mention that in the South, there were a lot of organizations besides the church. There were social organizations which you would learn mannerisms and etiquette and how to fit into certain places. But there was always the motto, lifting as you climb. And that became ingrained in not only me and all of us, that whatever we do, we have to bring others up with us. And however it's done, you cannot forget those that you've left behind.
That's true. And you mentioned the church. And, the church has served the Black community in so many different ways, not only from a spirituality standpoint, but the church has been the center point in our community,
Yes.
whether it's, voter registration, healthcare, children's programs. It's a lot of times the church was the first place that you spoke in front of a crowd when you went
That's
up and
true.
did your Easter speech. So
Yeah.
the church has been and remains a center point in the Black community all across the country, cross denominational. So that's so important. And so, I want to know, what led you to Newark, New Jersey, after being in Manhattan and Harlem? What led you to Newark, and then to do all the wonderful things that you have done through the years over in that community? How did that come about?
It came about simply through an invitation. I was doing Broadway and had been on the stage and had performed with some great artists. And I also, part of my career was being a music copyist. I would write music and transpose music for Broadway shows and artists. So
And
in the midst of,
did I see somewhere that you did that for UB Blake?
yes, yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay, all right,
I,
yeah.
in reality, I was doing a Broadway show, and I was also known as a music copyist. And I was asked if I would leave that show for a day or go on our off day to write the music for a new show that's being produced. And I was to go to Philadelphia, and I found out the new show was UB, the show. And UB Blake, still alive at that time, probably near 90, was there at my side as I was transposing and transcribing his music for the Broadway show. So, yes, I would do that when I was not performing. So it was very interesting because to travel as an artist, as a singer, and then sometimes at night you're writing the music, because sometimes a lot of shows at that time didn't have the music written. So I had the ability to listen and transcribe it and write the compositions for the artists and for the musicians. So to travel, sing in a show, and at night write the music, it was tiring, but
I can
but it was a
imagine.
wonderful, yeah, it was a wonderful experience, especially if I was traveling. I traveled in Europe doing much of that. I would be in a show, but then I would also write and transcribe the music for that show. So yes, I was on Broadway, and in fact, this was I don't know if this was, yeah, this was after I had written the music for UB, and I wrote the music for a number of other Black shows, and I got a call, and the call said, the lady on the phone said, we have spoken with three Broadway conductors, and they
Hmm.
each recommended you to come and see if you could be with us. And I want to know who is that? Who is us? And she said, in Newark, we have a school called the Newark Boys Chorus School, and we'd like for you to come. Uh, and I said, of course. So just the idea of working chorally. Uh, so I took a train and I took a bus to this place called Newark. And I saw those young men, grades 6 through 8, and they were like, to me, they were Black and Hispanic. The voices were like angels. And I just fell in love with them. So I decided I would leave New York and leave Broadway, well, and theater, and just work with these young men. And so that's how I came to Newark.
And how long were you the choral director at the Newark Boys Chorus?
I was there 8 glorious years.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, working and traveling all over the world. Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Czechoslovakia, traveling, training, and learning with them as we traveled. It was just a wonderful experience.
So I'm sure there are numerous alumni of that choir. Do you happen to see or hear from any of them today?
I do periodically. I hear from, I may run into them in Newark in a location. It happened that when I was with the city, that one of my students who traveled with us to Japan was a firefighter at this time. And he said to me, he said, do you know, because I required them to have pen pals, and we were on our way to Japan and they developed pen pals. He said, do you know that some of us still have those pen pals with those Japanese children who are now adults in their 30s? So it was very heart touching to know that those boys who are now men have communicated all those years with these young people who are now adults in another land. So I run into people like him, and sometimes on the streets, the boys will say, "Hi, how are you doing?" And I'm so grateful. They'll always say, "We thank you, we thank you, we thank you." So
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And after the you were there for 8 years, what did you do once you left that position?
A couple of years I was with a marketing firm for the city of Newark. And after that, a position became available, which was for arts and culture for the city of Newark. And I applied for that position and had an interview. And I was told by the mayor at that time, he said, "We definitely want you here. Please join us." And I did. So I became, I think the title at that time was supervisor of arts and culture or something like that.
And how has that been? How was that journey?
It was a wonderful journey. It was a challenging journey because you're working with government. And to work with government, you have to learn all the nuances, all the ins and outs. And also because there was no one else that was an assistant. So everything fell on me to do. Write all the programs, which I understood how to do, but then to get it through the process of passing one department or one director, and then the law department, and then making sure the mayor agrees with this program. There are a lot of layers in doing this, and when you're basically working alone, it takes a lot of hours. But it really didn't matter because this is what I enjoyed doing at the time.
And you were immersed in a activity that you really loved to be involved in, and so it was not really like work for you, even though it was, but it was a lot of enjoyment, I'm sure, that came with that. And so, I read your resume earlier, and it said music conductor, lecturer, published columnist, international concert artist. I mean, you've basically done it all.
Well, it only happened because I was blessed with a certain amount of abilities, a certain amount of talent. And with that talent as a singer, then I learned to be a conductor. As I mentioned, I learned to be a music writer. And then I loved research. I love history. So as a result of all these things I love to do, I just did them. My parents never told me you can't do anything. You're not supposed to do anything. Segregation may have been strong in the South, but it didn't stop me from trying anything because my parents said, there's no stopping, you just do it. So yes, I was able to do all these things because I was blessed with a certain amount of talent, and because no one said you could. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do all those things.
Yeah. It was just normal to you, right?
Yes, yes,
It was,
and working all the time. No, as you mentioned, yes, I worked a lot, but it was normal for me. It was normal to work till late at night and get up early and come back and do that thing. Same thing, 6 days a week, and sometimes seven, because I would even work on weekends to make programs work out for the city. But it was just normal. It was just what you're supposed to do.
yeah, yeah, that's great. It's so inspiring. And I'm looking at some of the comments that people on Facebook are posting. Matter of fact, if you have a question for Gwen, put that into the chat so that we can hopefully ask Gwen that question. But a lot of people are making comments about how much, you're such an inspiration, that you're an American legacy. One comment was they were just overjoyed to know your journey, your life's journey. And it is pretty amazing when you think about where you've come from and where you are today. Um, One question just popped up. Do you still sing and perform?
When I'm invited. Yes, I do. I find a lot of joy now in talking to young people. I carry my story from Birmingham to Botswana, the story of coming from the Deep South and then being a U.S. representative in the country of Botswana. I carry that story to young people to inspire them, to let them know that it certainly does not matter where you come from. You must study, make sure you're prepared, and then you move forward. In my case, I was chosen to do a lot of things because people saw what I was doing. But you need
Hmm.
to be there, be exposed, be aware, and be prepared. So I enjoy talking now a lot about my journey.
And that's what made you develop the one woman show from Birmingham to Botswana.
Yes, yes, exactly. Um, I was really inspired when I was at the Newark Boys Chorus School, and it was Black History Month. And I had always had in my mind certain things about what happened with Denise, but I never really shared it. I never really talked about it. And when the boys at Black History Month, I was showing continuously Eyes on the Prize. So they'd come in during their lunch hour or they'd walk by the door and stop a few minutes and ask me about what was this, and we discuss it. And I told those boys who were very bright young men, I said, I was a part of this era. I said, I grew up in this era. And one young man asked me, said, was this during Lincoln time? And so I realized I said civil rights does not ring a bell with these young adults. And I
Yeah.
do understand, that they may not understand chronology. They may not understand the time span in which I lived and what was showing on Eyes on the Prize. But it awakened me. It made me realize I need to tell this story, that these young people need to know about that time, to know that a person still living participated in those civil rights marches and met Dr. King and still alive and still able to do things, they need to make that connection and
Yes.
understand
Yes.
that history. So,
Yes.
so that's what I enjoy doing now. And when I do give talks, one thing that's very important, they must ask me questions. I require a Q&A period to for their young minds, for their curious minds to reach out to me and see if I can inspire. That's what I hope. I can inspire them through their questions.
And you have such a rich history. It's really amazing the things that you have done throughout your lifetime. And but for that event, you may not have experienced that. Not your mother saying no on that evening in 1963, the Saturday night before the bombing of that church, with your
Yes,
mother saying no, that event or that with her saying no changed your life.
that's true. That's true.
It really
which
did.
has to be, yeah, and it has kind of become a mantra for me. Um, as I speak to the young people or adults, I constantly say, what if I I did not live to do what I do? What if my mother had said, yes, Gwen, you can go to church with Denise? My mantra is that you take what you've been given and do something with. And my life has been spared. And so I'm taking it and doing something with it. And I asked the children, I said, what are you going to do? I
Yeah.
said, you don't have to end nuclear preparation of nuclear weapons. You don't have to find the cure for cancer, but you can do something. You can help that elderly person next to you. Uh, you can maybe give a sandwich to someone. The point is that for the space you take on this earth, there is an obligation for you to do
Yes.
something. And
Yeah.
so I try to leave with my message now. We all are obligated to do something. And the children do. And very often they will come up with things. They will tell me, I am going to make sure that the water is pure over the world. Or I am going to cure hunger. They come up with these big dreams, but that's wonderful. That's wonderful that they have a
Yeah.
goal now that they can see that they can believe in themselves.
Now, tell me about how you became an American cultural specialist. I believe it was former President Bill Clinton that
Yes.
appointed you an American cultural specialist.
Well, actually, I was appointed twice. The first time was under George H.W. Bush, and then
Okay.
then under Clinton. And the way it worked was that I was actually with the Newark Boys Chorus School, and we were at a conference in Princeton, New Jersey, a boy choir, a youth choir conference. And a gentleman, I was talking with some people, and a gentleman asked me, well, what is it you want to do? I said, I want to sing in Africa and go to my motherland. And I want to publish, and this is what I called it, unbastardized Negro spirituals. And by that I meant because the Negro spiritual is such a history of our people in this land and such a story through the music that I think it's very important that we keep that music strong and it's so spiritual. But I wanted to publish that which has not been changed. I wanted the folk melodies to stay as they were developed. And so this person listened to me. And after this conference, he called and said, I heard you talking, and I want to invite you. I happen to have an international children's choral festival, and I'd like for you to come. I'd like for you to come and adjudicate. I'd like for you to come and conduct a choir, a 600 voice choir of children from around the world. and
Wow.
and
Wow.
yeah, and I'm asking you to take the place of someone who can't be here. And this person who can't be here who has written a lot of books on Black history, and we'd like for you to step in and take her place. And I was so surprised because I really didn't know this person, but he had faith in me from whatever I had said. So I went to, and it was in Des Moines, Iowa, and I went to Des Moines and did all those things and more and talked. And there was a gentleman, and that year it happened to be they were focusing on choral music of Africa. And a gentleman, Kabe Ngomo, who was considered the father of African choral music, listened to me and said, "I have someone I want you to meet." After the conference, he said, "I'll give you a call," and he did. He said, "Ms. Moten, I'd like for you to meet some people in Washington, D.C., associated with the White House." And he said, "Would you come?" I said, "Of course I'll come." So I went to Washington, and I went to the United States Information Agency, and I met a couple of people, and they said, "Give us your resume. We have something in mind for you." And I went home, and probably less than a week, they called and said, "We like for you to know, on behalf of the President of the United States, you have been appointed an American cultural specialist.
All
And
right.
so I said, oh my goodness. And then I said, what's that? And they simply said, you have singularly been chosen to represent the United States in your field of endeavor, anywhere in the world that we may send you. And I said, wonderful. And so they asked me, would I accept? I said, yes, most definitely. And they called back and said, you've been appointed from the president through the United States Information Agency, and we want you to go to Africa. So I was became the American culture specialist, and they sent me to a school, a music session. They were bringing people from all over Europe and in Africa to work with music and learn various cultures. So I was sent there as the American cultural specialist, where I taught and conducted. I taught music theory. I conducted choirs, morning sessions. I listened to choirs from Africa and other places, and I critiqued them. And I would share what I felt, how the choirs could develop. And I was asked to give a concert for dignitaries from all of these countries, and I did that. And so that's what an American cultural specialist is. You would go into the country and share in your area of expertise something. And in
That's
reality,
amazing.
yes, yes. And you're serving as a diplomat, but you're really drawing in people to understand America and its ways. You're not forcing anything on them. You're just sharing with them. For example, the concert I gave, it was music from America. So I brought in various genre of music and sang it to them and told them the stories. So this is what I did as the American cultural specialist. And I think immediately when I came back from there, I got a call and they said, we want you back. And I was told this was unprecedented to be invited back. But they wanted me to go back to the same place. And I was told they don't do that. But they're really requesting or kind of demanding that you come back there. And I said, well, why, certainly. So I went back there a second time, and it was called the Mati Song Festival, which is now one of the biggest festivals in all of Africa. So that's what an American cultural specialist does. He represents the United States in his area, culturally, in his area of expertise.
Well, that's an amazing story, and what an honor, you know, what a great honor to serve as an American cultural specialist and share your gift with the world. You know, a lot of
Yes,
people don't get an opportunity or have an opportunity to do that, and so that's such an honor. And I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity tonight for you to share your life story with the individuals who are joining us via Facebook tonight. Matter of fact, I have to give a shameless plug for American Legacy Network and say that anybody who is watching, you need to subscribe to our Black History streaming video service. If you subscribe to Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or HBO Go, you need to have a subscription to American Legacy Network, where we celebrate Black history and culture every day. It's only $3.99 a month. You can go to AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv and subscribe and see all kinds of great content, Black history documentaries, original programs, just all kinds of content streaming on American Legacy Network. So I had to put in that shameless plug for American Legacy Network. But we really are so glad that you were able to join us on our fireside chat. And I haven't done many of these. Generally, my sons are the ones who are interviewing and talking. We developed a number of virtual programs during the pandemic, which are hosted generally by younger people, not myself. So this is one of the first ones that I've done. but I thought I needed to do this with you to share your story because I think it is such an inspiring story. What you've done through your life's journey and what the individuals that you have contributed to. And I think I saw one comment that came up that said that you even produce cotillions. You know, someone said
Yes.
that they
Yes.
missed doing cotillions with you.
Oh,
So, I mean, you just covered a lot of different areas, and that's so amazing. And sharing your gift in all those various areas. So, I do have a couple of other questions
mhm.
for you. Well, not really questions, just the fun part. With everything that's going on in the world today, the pandemic, we're not able to get out as much as we do, have been used to. Just crazy time period in all of our lives. What is it that brings you joy?
Oh, a lot brings me joy. There is joy in knowing that I'm still here to share and encourage. Joy in knowing that I have been so blessed, that we're all favored, but I've been so blessed and being able to share my blessings with others. I have
Hmm.
joy, and I have a daughter that brings me great joy. Uh, I have a joy in just sharing. So that's my joy. My joy is that the blessings I have, I can give to others.
Okay, that's great. That's really fantastic. And the other thing is, tell me, who are your five favorite musicians?
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'll have to think of that. I know um I love all types of music, whether it's opera, whether it's spirituals, whether it's gospel. So there's a variety of music I like. In the popular pop vein, Nancy Wilson was my heart. She was such a stylist. Certainly Mahalia Jackson in the gospel. Um, and the black classical artists, I just love them all. Hellstork, Leontine Price, and opera. Oh, Rodney is hard. I have to really think, and if they are favorites or just I just love them so equally because they're gifted and they share their talent.
Well, that's it. It's always hard to narrow it down to you know five or six of your favorites because if someone was to ask me that question, you know people who know me and know that I love the '70s, they would start with the stylistics or the dramatics, being
Yes.
from Ohio, the OJs, those kind of Blue Magic, those kind of groups there.
Okay.
But we have a here's another shameless plug. But since you mentioned classical music, we have a great documentary, Marian Anderson documentary that's
Yeah.
currently streaming on American Legacy Network, and it is was produced by Dante James, and it's a great documentary about her life
Hmm.
and her journey, and pretty amazing to see what she accomplished, throughout her musical career.
Yeah.
And so, um, go to American Legacy Network TV and see that as well.
Well,
But
but she's
Gwen,
certainly she's certainly one of the artists that I truly admire, and I
yeah,
tell a short story about her. After her singing, being denied to sing in Constitution Hall by the Daughters of the American Revolution, I tell the little story that these same segregationist women who denied her some 25 years ago, after that denial, they presented me with an award, and I just chuckle of the fact that if only 25 years earlier I couldn't have even talked with them, but now they've changed a little bit, and now I'm being honored.
Right.
So, things change. Things
things
change.
things change, and we hope that they continue to change. But certainly, again, Gwen, I want to thank you for joining us on this fireside chat this evening. Through the comments that I've seen, you've been such a great inspiration to so many people, not only in Birmingham, but here in New York and Newark and across the country and around the world. So thank you. You are Black history. You are an American legacy. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us tonight.
Well, Rodney, it is truly my pleasure that I've been able to share a little bit with you. I thank you for the invitation. And I just say to those that are listening, just please give, share, and tell your history. It's been my pleasure, Rodney.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's it for me tonight and our fireside chat with Gwen Moten. Tune in to American Legacy Network at www.americanlegacynetwork.tv, or you can download our app on iOS and for iOS and Android devices. And until next time, take care and continue to celebrate our history, just not in February, but all
Yes,
year long, because our history, Black history, is made every day. Thank you.
thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.